Hello, it's Bony Tony from Bony Productions and another outside production, this time again football related. Now the last one was outside Manchester United Stadium. Well, this time, guess what? As promised, I'm outside Manchester City Stadium, the Etihad Stadium. It looks a bit like the San Siro Stadium, the way they've got those circular staircases at every so often. They've got another one over somewhere else. Anyway, you can't see it. Never mind. It's San Siro Stadium in Milan, but it has I was going to say it has an Italian manager, but it doesn't. It has a Spanish manager, Pep Guardiola. Anyway, we'll come to all that in a minute. We have typical Manchester conditions: grey sky. Oh, wait a minute. Just to prove who I am, Bony Tony, yes. And I've even got, I don't know if you can see them, but my Manchester City trainers, they're sort of light blue. Anyway, never mind that. If you can't see them, you've lost out. Now, Manchester City Football Club was originally called Manchester Village in Roman times. Then, in the Middle Ages, it had become Manchester Town. But finally, when Manchester became an industrial revolution shithole of enormous proportions, churning out smoke from the thousands of chimneys while its inhabitants dwelt in the most horrendous hovels, see the works of Friedrich Engels, who lived, got pissed and had girlfriends here in the first half of the 19th century, and then horrified at the conditions of the working classes here, teamed up with his fellow German Karl Marx to come up with the cobblers known as communism. It had become Manchester City. Yes, Manchester was now a thriving hub of industrial activity. Later on, to avoid punitive rates from the port of Liverpool, Manchester even built canals all the way from the coast to here and beyond, allowing industry to thrive in the whole area all around Manchester. That is why you see a ship as part of the emblem of Manchester City and United, even though it is 40 miles inland. Well, I never. Bit windy, excuse me. Right, now that's some background history of the city of Manchester. Now for the history of Manchester City, the football club. But first, here's some light entertainment. Blue moon, blue moon, blue moon, dang dang dang, blue moon, dong dang dang dong 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 dang dang dang, blue moon. You saw me standing alone, without a dream in my heart, without a love of my and now compare that rendition of Blue Moon based on the Marcel's 1960 version with the Manchester City fans version, which is like this: Blue Moon, you saw me standing alone, without a dream in my heart, without a love of my heart. Anyway, there you go. Not quite as rhythmic, not quite as soulful. Right, no. Anyway, so let's go on to the next part of the story. Now, the 50s and 60s. In that time, Manchester City were probably more successful in the post-war period. After that's post-Second World War, by the way, not the Wars of the Roses or the Trojan War, just to clarify things, than their notorious neighbours Manchester United. They won trophies. For example, goalkeeper Bert Trautmann, who was German and was an ex-German prisoner of war, but stayed in England and played for them. He famously broke his neck in the final of 1956, but carried on playing and made some saves afterwards, and City won. In the late 60s, they also did very well and won a league title in 1968 and the FA Cup in 1969. And some of their most famous players included Tony Buck. Tony Buck. A book. It's called Seasonal Salads. That's to illustrate the name Buck. And Colin Bell. Do that again. Did you hear the sound of a bell? And Mike Doyle. Well, I can't demonstrate a Doyle. Sorry about that. And in the 70s, they had more great players like Rodney Marsh, Dennis Stewart, Peter Barnes, Dave Watson. However, from this point on, they tended to be somewhat overshadowed by United. Grrr. Fast forwarding to the 90s, despite the best efforts of Georgie King-Cladsey, they got relegated. And by the way, the T-shirt I've got on under my Bony Tony sheet T-shirt, the kind of weird colour, it's a kind of weird darker blue, isn't it? they wore that shade of blue around that time. They got relegated, so it serves them right because it's horrible. Anyway, I've got a t-shirt in that colour, but never mind. And they got relegated even again after that, and they spent some time in the third tier of English football, losing twice to Macclesfield. But getting promotion back to the second division by coming back from near defeat at the Wembley playoff against the mighty Gillingham. Oh yes, that was great, that match, I remember it. And now, of course, they are arguably the top team in the country, bringing you up to date, having won loads of Premier League titles, loads of Carabao Cups, but sadly as yet, no Champions League wins, despite having the amazing Pepsi Guardiola as manager. Sorry, coach. Now, well, that's pretty much it. So it's goodbye from me and from the Etihad Stadium in East Manchester. A far cry from the old Main Road Stadium in Moss Side, where I often saw them play when they were shit. And it used to rain a lot, of course, because this is Manchester, and they had an open stand without a roof over it, and that was called the Gene Kelly stand, because they used to sing in the rain. Singing in the rain, do you get it? But they're not shit now anyway, they're very good. Come on, City! Bye-bye, and don't forget to subscribe, and bye-bye from Bony Tony from the football ground of Manchester City Football Club. Bye!